I love stories. I love hearing stories. I love telling stories because stories have power. Stories seem to have power for at least 3 reasons that I've come to understand. The first one is that stories have a magical quality that invokes our imagination. How do they do this? I want you to think for a moment about what would happen if I said a sentence like, chocolate is good. Okay, you're probably like, yeah, chocolate's good. What happened there? I told you an idea, and what happens with an idea is it comes into our mind, and the moment that idea comes into our mind, we decide, is that true or is that false? But what if instead of saying chocolate is good, I started by saying once upon a time? Now here's what happened. The moment your mind heard once upon a time, it no longer was interested whether or not it was true or false because it knows it's probably not. It's just a story. So your mind decides to take a break and your imagination comes alive. Once upon a time evokes our imagination. And in the process of using our imagination, it opens our hearts. That's why you could be watching a story, someone in a movie theater, someone sitting next to you while you're watching Netflix, and you're hearing them cry from something they're watching on TV. I've even taught workshops where I told people a story that we constructed together that was completely false, but by the time we'd finished telling the story, they were so moved that they were weeping. Why? They knew it wasn't true. True. And yet on a deeper level, it was true because it allowed their imagination to open and move their heart in ways that a sentence of statement of fact, true or false, fact or fiction wouldn't work, wouldn't do that. The story opens us up. And one of the reasons I think that happens, and the second reason I think stories have power, is because our lives are stories. If I asked you to tell me who you are, you would not simply start listing off a baseball card of facts. I was born in this date, I weigh this much, I went to school here. You would tell me a story about how your life, when you were born and your parents and where you grew up and where you went to school and your friends and all the experiences and amazing things that have happened throughout your life because we live in stories. That's how we relate to ourselves. That's why sometimes when we're watching a story, it resonates deep within our story and it moves our hearts in unique ways. The last reason I think stories are powerful is because stories are one of the primary ways that we actually change. See, I think we change based on one of 2 things. We actually act or change based on a model, something or someone we can see in front of us who does something different. This person built a bench. I can watch them build a bench, then I can build a bench or lay a tile floor. I can watch them lay the tile floor and lay the tile floor myself. But without a model, I have to revert to a story. And this is really powerful, especially when we talk about our primary relationships, because if our parents were good models, we can look to our parents and say, this is how they would act. Or if our boss was a good boss, we can say, that's a good model of what that looks like. But when they fail us, and they usually will, we have to start telling stories. We have to start telling stories of what is a good boss or what is a good parent or what is a good son or daughter. We tell stories about those things, and here's the key. The stories offer us the opportunity to act out of the model that we grew up in, or this is the powerful part. A story can offer us the opportunity to act into a different story. We can say, what if I were like this particular person and I tried doing it the way they did it? Instead of doing it based on the model that I've seen before, I actually use the story as a way to ask, how would this person act if they were me right now? The scripture is full of stories of people who acted in a particular way, and I find them particularly helpful for me to ask myself, if I were sitting in their shoes, if I were David, how would I act in this moment in my life when I feel like maybe I'm facing a giant? How would I act? The story offers me the opportunity to act into a new story in a way that the model could never allow me to do. So as I close this first video, and I'm going to talk more about stories over the next several videos, but I want to ask you this question. What stories right now are you acting out of? What stories could you read, could you see, could you come to know and understand that would open your imagination and move your heart and help you redefine the story that you're living in, those stories that you could act into? What stories do you need to hear to act into a new future for yourself today?